If we can correct this tendency to split, we shall have a very strong and tough constructional material. Plywood has achieved this object. It is built up of 3 or more layers of quite thin stuff, veneers, sometimes only 1/100th of an inch thick, glued together. The important thing is that the direction of the grain of each layer runs at right angles to that of the pieces above and below it, so that a tendency of any one layer to split is counteracted by the grain of its neighbors. Its strength-weight ratio is high, and for that reason it is used in constructions where such a requirement is of importance, for instance, aeroplanes. To mention but one type, the famous Mosquito is built of plywood. Now we shall come to earth again, down to the plywood factory, and find ourselves at the starting point of operations amongst the stacks of logs awaiting treatment. These logs range in size up to big fellows 10 tons and more, but none is so large or unwieldy but that it can be handled rapidly and smoothly by the great gantry crane, whether it be as an addition to one of the stacks or a transfer from stack to steaming pit. For strange as it may seem, the first operation our logs have to undergo is a kind of cooking, immersion in boiling water and steam. Here goes a log into one of the pits, where it will remain until the hot moisture has penetrated right through to the center. This treatment makes the wood easily workable in the machines that are to cut or peel it into thin slices or veneers on the same principle as the moistening of the face before shaving, which softens the bristles of the incipient beard and eases the work of the razor. When saturation point has been reached, the log is removed from the pit and the rough bark cut away from the trunk. The tree trunk, as it is at present, is too long to fit into the machines which carry out the next operation, peeling, and it must be cut into sections. The decision as to exactly where the cut shall be made is an important one, which calls for great experience. Otherwise, in truing up the sections for the peeling machine, much valuable timber may be cut to waste. An electrically driven bandsaw is used for cutting through the logs. When the saw has bitten well into the log, it is inclined to jam, and so a wedge is driven in, which forces the two faces of the cut apart and gives the saw a working clearance. This finishes the outdoor part of the work, and we follow the prepared log sections indoors to the next stage. The peeling operation is carried out on this machine, which acts rather like a lathe, the trunk being rotated against a long knife extending the whole length of the log. This is set at an angle with a depth gauge to cut the veneer at any desired thickness from 1/100 to 3/8 of an inch. From the back of the peeler, the veneer is very wet, and the next operation is... This is done by slow travel through an oven or dryer. The heat to which the pieces of veneer are subjected and the length of time they take to pass through the dryer govern the percentage of moisture that is extracted. When the pieces emerge, they are tested for moisture content by a special instrument. They must not be too dry or too wet, because the further operations, which they will be called on to undergo, necessitate a predetermined water content. Nevertheless, in their passage through the oven, they have lost considerable moisture and shrinkage has occurred. This is obvious from the appearance of the veneers with their crinkled edges. Before any further manufacturing process takes place, the pieces are sorted for quality, lack of flaws, and so on. In order to flatten out the shrunken pieces and to get rid of the crinkling of the edges, they are put in a press for a suitable period at controlled temperatures and pressures, after which the veneers assume this neat, flat appearance. Then they are again sorted, this time into widths and sizes. The edges of veneers must be perfectly straight to ensure correct butting when they come to be assembled into plywood. So the next operation is carried out on guillotine machines, which cut and trim the pieces to true straight edges. The pieces which are to form the surfaces of plywood boards must be butt jointed before assembly. Butt jointing veneers that may be only 1/100th of an inch in thickness, gluing them together edge to edge, is a business calling for extreme accuracy in preparation. First, the edges that are to be joined are inserted in a head which has an extremely exact performance. Then the pieces to be joined are fed side by side into a machine which draws them together, applies the adhesive material, and presses the edges firmly together. From the delivery end of the machine, out come the pieces securely butt jointed. You can scarcely see the joint with the naked eye. Well, that was a run through the operations preparatory to building up the actual plywood. Angles to its neighbor, all being firmly glued together. Glue can be in liquid form as here, where the pieces to be glued are run between rollers which are continually fed with glue. They are built up to the desired number of plies. Glue is also used in solid form, prepared in this thin paper-like material. The build-up is on the same principle: one veneer with its grain running one way, a sheet of glue, another veneer with the grain in a transverse direction, and so on. Whichever method may be used, the pressing operation is the same. The press is heated to the correct degree and pressure is applied. When a suitable time has elapsed, the pieces of plywood will have become rigidly cemented, and their rough edges must be trimmed off and the pieces cut to size. As the bed of this machine moves along, two circular saws, one on each side, cut it laterally and another cuts it across. Still, this is not the end. In order to give the wood a smooth and attractive surface, it is transferred to a scraping machine. This removes a very thin shaving, and the resulting wood surface is seen here. Another type of surface is given by the sander. Pieces of plywood are fed into this, and 3 rollers covered with glass paper revolve rapidly in contact with the wood, reducing the surface to such a smoothness as will allow the immediate application of wood finishes, such as French polish. The last operation is an important one. All plywood must be scrupulously inspected before it is allowed to leave the factory. And a final check is made on the moisture content. Here are some piles of the finished article awaiting dispatch. Veneers from specially selected fine woods are best obtained by slicing them off horizontally, by which method the value of grain, figure, and pattern appear to full advantage. The maintenance at concert pitch of all the cutting tools which are used throughout these operations is a vital necessity, and we close this short visit with a glance inside the department responsible. Here, the cutter, with a specially shaped edge, used in the scraper to obtain the lace-thin shaving, is being sharpened. Here, the knife, used in the horizontal slicer. And this ingenious machine is renewing the keen-pointed bevels on a circular. We have followed the process of plywood making from the log to the finished article. As an example of the decorative effect of the material in actual use in the of paneling.